lovely that I just found this sub, because it will give me a place to lay this story and hopefully get it out of my mind a bit, as it just happened today. I was driving on a large highway this afternoon, and the far left lane meant for the faster traffic flow. I noticed a car come right up very close behind me, so I prepared to get over to let him pass. I noticed when I glanced at the man driving in my rearview mirror that he had a medical mask on, but no one in the passenger seat next to him. I figured he's an Uber driver with someone in the back and avoiding COVID risk as best as he can. I glanced back again, and he's holding something in front of his face. I did a little double take because surely not, but he was holding a handheld camcorder filming me. I was in shock and didn't really believe it because, dude, we're on a highway. Like, why? And he suddenly whips to the lane on my right, essentially trapping me between the median wall, the car in front of me, and him to my right. He keeps his car at pace with mine, staring at me and filming me on his camcorder through my passenger side window, and I'm thinking, nah, not today. So I dial the police immediately as I'm slowing down. We make eye contact, and he slows down too. The police ask for his license plate number, and he's removed it from the front of his car, so I try to maneuver behind him to see his back plate. But the minute he realizes that I'm trying to follow him for his numbers, he goes full on fast and furious. I follow him for a bit, but he starts driving recklessly enough to avoid me catching a look at his plates. That I just stop because, again, a crowded highway, and also not a professional high-speed chase driver. Totally not worth it. They sent a police car onto the highway to find him, but the dude was long gone. So now, there's a strange man who possesses a film of my license plate number, car, and my face that hasn't been tracked. I froze up 2 or 3 times when cars like his would pass me on the rest of my way home. I even reassessed the situation, thinking that I'd cut him off or something. But I'm a pretty go-with-the-flow driver. It also may not seem frightening, but anyone ever made eye contact with someone and just get freaked and have a bad feeling? That dude was shady. So to the creepy man hiding your face with a medical mask, filming women on the highway, and likely watching me on your late 90s camcorder right now, let's never fucking meet. So let me preface this story by explaining that I live in a regional town of Australia. There is no sex trafficking problem here. It just doesn't exist. There's no gang activity, no unsolved murders, no missing people, or unsolved crimes. Just to give you the lowdown of the sort of area that I live. Also, I'm a trans man. I'm pre-teased, so I don't often pass for male despite me trying to, and that is probably somewhat obvious by my profile picture in Facebook where I look pretty feminine. Now, on to the story. This happened today, and I'm still unsure whether I should do anything about it or if the police would even bother. I flip furniture as a hobby. I like to pick up free or cheap worn-out furniture, repair it, repaint it, and then sell it on. It keeps my mind occupied. Facebook Marketplace is usually my go-to where I find stuff. So this morning, I found a post for a free table. I messaged the person asking if I can pick it up today, and as I'm messaging them, their Facebook profile picture disappeared. I thought that was weird, but maybe they had just changed it. They agreed to a time and flicked me the address. No worries, it's on the edge of town. They send me a random obscure message saying, "Are you coming alone? Or will you have your husband with you?" Okay, I'm not married, and this is slapping me in the face with red flags, but I think maybe the table is heavy and they think that I might need help to carry it. I respond with, "Nah, it's all good, I'll be alright." There is no response. I have this uneasy feeling that something isn't right with this. Never felt this way before, and I don't know why I do now. But I figure it's the middle of the day, and I've got my phone, and I'm driving, and this is a safe town. Maybe I'm just overthinking the whole thing, right? So I hop in my car and head to the agreed place. I couldn't find the exact address on my GPS, which I thought was very odd. But nevertheless, I find the street. There's nothing there. By that I mean, there's a creek that runs by the side of it, empty lots with bushland and tall overgrown grass, and a disused, isolated, somewhat motel, and 3 warehouses. By this stage, I'm feeling really off. Everything inside me is saying, "Dude, there is something wrong with this whole situation." And I'm paying a little more attention to that feeling at this stage, but I keep going. 2 of the warehouses have no signage, but there's a couple of cars out front and I can tell that they're used as businesses of some sort. Their address isn't the one I was given though, and even though the motel looked like it hadn't been used in years, I see a mid-40s guy sitting on the step of one of the units smoking. I think to myself that's a bit bloody creepy, but maybe he owns the place and is doing some work there and is just taking a break, or maybe he's just a squatter. So I drive down the street a little further and find the last warehouse. The address is where pickup is meant to be, so this must be it. I start thinking maybe they got the number wrong. I mean, this place has tall weeds surrounding it, rubbish out of front, and surely hasn't been used since it was built. I might like free furniture, but I am not an idiot. I decide that I don't want it anymore and message the bloke that I was sorry, but I couldn't find the place. I get a message back saying, "Are you in the ute? I saw you drive up and down a couple of times. Are you alone?" There's no cars or any sign of life at this warehouse, and by now, my intuition is screaming at me to get out of there. Yes, I have a ute, but I don't see anyone around. So how did they know that? I message a reply. "Yeah, mate, sorry, I can't find the place. Cheers anyway." I get no response for about an hour. No sorry or anything. Just "It's the old motel. You have to get out of your car and walk to the back of the reception." That same worn-down isolated motel with overgrown weeds that hasn't been used for many years. The same one with a weird guy sitting on the step. I message back, "What are you talking about? That place hasn't been used for years." I get no response. Nothing. So I head home and sit down for a drink and to Google this place again. I've forgotten the exact address he gave, so I go back to the messenger to find it, except it's gone. So I go back to Facebook Marketplace, and the whole ad is gone. It just disappeared as if it didn't happen. What do you lot think? Did I just avoid something sinister happening? My gut says I did. Creepy free table guy who was likely planning on doing something really bad to an unsuspecting freebie hunter. Let's not meet. My encounters with John started last summer while I was at work. I work in an apartment complex with a few other ladies, so we regularly interact with hundreds of residents and even more strangers, especially during the summer when people are coming in to tour and sign leases. On Monday mornings, during the busy season, I usually come into a stack of pending applications. As the property manager, I have to review the results of each background check as well as every applicant's proof of income if they can be approved to live in the complex based on our requirements. Monday, May 6th was just like any other. I reviewed the applications from over the weekend. Some were approved and some were not. I then called the applicants to let them know the status of their applications. One of the declined applicants, John, was particularly sketchy looking. His credit score was particularly low, and he had no obvious source of income, and a lot of his payment history consisted of late payments. The biggest red flag, however, was a collection for a landlord for over $6,000. This immediately indicated to me that he skipped out of his previous apartment or completely trashed the place. Like everyone else, I called him to tell him why he was declined and to explain that we would be sending him an adverse action letter. Once I was on the phone with John, he initially said I must be wrong about the collection account, and I gave him the name of the complex. He then tried to explain the perfectly reasonable explanation for why he must have the collection amount. According to his story, he had been living with his girlfriend. They broke up partway through their lease and decided to both move out as a result. On the day that they left, they went to their apartment complex leasing office and paid the remainder of the lease in cash to a woman they had supposedly never seen before. "She must have stolen my money," he said. "You can't hold this against me." Though I seriously doubted the validity of his story, I apologized and told him that I couldn't approve anyone that didn't meet our leasing requirements, then ended the call. Later that day, he called back and told one of my leasing agents, Brandy, that he'd contacted the collection agency and paid off the balance in full. "Now, you will approve me, right?" She asked him to forward the proof of this to our office and told him, "The manager will have to look at it to decide if you can be approved now." Sure enough, the letter from the collection agency came in later that day. He called back again, and she told him again that the manager would have to look at it and then let him know. Meanwhile, I was trying to decide if I could approve him. Technically, he still had a collection account on his record, even if the balance was now zero, and he didn't meet some of other rent requirements. Thankfully, before I had to make a decision, someone else with great credit and a solid source of income came in and rented our last one-bedroom apartment. The apartments are first come, first serve, so we called John back and told him that we unfortunately no longer had any one-bedroom apartments left. Fast forward to late July 2019. I'm at work with our newest leasing agent, Sarah, one afternoon preparing for turns. A young man with sallow skin comes in, and immediately I recognized him, but I wasn't sure from where. I was fairly certain he wasn't a resident. I recognized most of the people that live at my complex, but maybe he was a friend of a resident or someone that had toured recently. He explained that his name was John and that he'd applied for an apartment earlier in the summer. It suddenly hit me where I knew the guy from. Back in May, he, a complete stranger, had tried to get into my car with me. At that time, I had warned my coworkers of the event, even suggested there was a small chance he might come in over the weekend and to be careful, even though he'd told me he was only in town for that one day. Immediately, I was uncomfortable. He looked super angry. He pointed to my desk and asked, "Where's the lady that normally sits there? Like, where's the manager?" My desk is just that. It's my desk, but on the weekends, when it's just Brandy working, she often sits at my desk because my computer is the only one with functioning speakers. Likewise, Brandy is much older, around late 50s, and people very regularly assume that she is the manager since she's so much older. "Oh, you must mean Brandy," I said, forcing myself to seem cheerful. "Oh, she's not working today. When will she be in next? I have a bone to pick with that fucking bitch." Of course, I lied to him. "Oh, she's out sick, and I have no idea when she'll be well enough to come back to work." "So she's at home then?" he asked. "Where does she live?" I laughed like he was joking and told him that I can't give out any of the employees' personal information. He then proceeded to fill us in, telling us that Brandy had screwed him out of the apartment by not letting him know fast enough if paying off the collection account meant he could rent an apartment. Clearly, Brandy was conspiring against him because she rented the apartment to someone else when she knew he needed the apartment. Now he was homeless because of her. She was clearly the worst manager in the entire world, and someone needed to teach her a lesson. And not only was he homeless now, he was out $6,000 because obviously he wouldn't have paid that balance off if he knew that he'd lose the apartment regardless. Sarah and I were very attentive the entire time, frowning slightly and nodding our heads sympathetically as he went on his long, hateful rant. Clearly he was mistaken about Brandy being the manager. His rage really should have been directed at me, if anyone, but I wasn't going to point that out to him at this point. In an attempt to curb his anger, I told him there was no way Brandy or any of us would have been acting maliciously in renting the last one-bedroom apartment to someone else. The apartments are, again, first come, first serve, and we're just doing our jobs by renting the apartments out. I then told him that we still had a 2-bedroom apartment available for rent, and if he was interested in that unit. I had no intentions of renting any apartments to him at this point, and I was pretty certain he couldn't afford the 2-bedroom. It was twice as expensive as the 1-bedroom, of course. But my hope was that it would calm him down enough for him to leave, because I was showing an effort to accommodate him. At this point, he told me that no, he wasn't interested in a more expensive apartment, that frankly, our complex seemed pretty shitty and he wouldn't want to live here anyway. He then proceeded to ask us a bunch of other questions. "Is this a family-owned business? Are you 2 sisters? How old are you? Are you related to Brandy? Does anyone know you're here right now? If something were to happen to you, would it hurt Brandy?" A feeling of dread washed over me. No one asked those kind of questions. No normal, sane person, at least. Worse, he was standing in the doorway, blocking our only exit. I looked at Sarah across the room and knew she expected me to know what to do. I'm going to have to kill this guy, I realized. Up to this point, I was hoping that being nice and understanding would be enough to get him to leave. In my line of work, you deal with a lot of weirdos. My husband always gets mad when I tell him about the weird, creepy, gross encounters that I have with residents and strangers, and he always asks why I tolerate it. "Just kick people out," he tells me. "Tell them you'll call the cops." The problem is that a lot of weirdos are harmless, and frankly it's easier to deal with them by being nice than mean. If I tried to kick out every resident that is an asshole to me, the apartments would be empty and we'd be collecting no rent. And if I lost my cool every time someone is weird, every time I'd had to deal with that person going forward would be awkward and difficult because they'd had one bad experience with me. Also, you just never know when my escalating the situation will lead to the other person also escalating further, damaging property or harming someone. But in this case, John was clearly escalating regardless of what I said and did. I looked at my purse on the floor. Both my phone and gun were in it. It seemed so out of reach. Surely John would notice me grabbing my bag and awkwardly digging around it. The gun was in a holster in a hidden pocket of the bag. I didn't know if he had a weapon on him, and if he realized that I was getting my weapon, he might attack me outright. Trying to appear still to him, I stretched my leg out, trying to quietly drag my bag closer to me. He screamed something about getting fucked over all the time by fucking bitches, and I finally snapped at him. "You're making me uncomfortable now, and I need you to leave." He tried to say something else, and I screamed again to leave. I grabbed my bag, hoping that I'd be able to get the gun out fast enough. I don't know if he saw where things were heading, or if he just thought I was going to call the police. But he got up and ran out of the office. Sarah and I immediately locked up the office and left. As we were leaving, Sarah told me how crazy the whole thing was. She'd be wishing for something exciting to happen ever since she'd been hired, and I remember telling her that I had thought I was going to have to kill the guy to protect us. "With what? The stapler?" She didn't know about my gun. Yeah, with the stapler." Thankfully, John never came back in. It's been over a year now, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that he's moved on and won't be back. I'm super glad I didn't have to kill him. If he hadn't left when he did, I'm pretty sure it would have gotten to that point, based on his vile threats and previous behavior. And I really hope that day never comes. Okay, so I'm going to try to give you as much backstory on this situation as I can. I live in a block of flats. It's a bit of a rough area in my opinion, which occasionally has some sketchy characters going about. There are 2 buildings, and in one of them is a washroom where the residents all go to use the washing or drying facilities. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I use these facilities, not as often as I'd like, because more often when I go, the same guy just keeps appearing. The washroom is usually busy. It can take a few visits to go at a time when a machine is not in use. Despite that, it's very rare to ever see anybody in there. There's no one person I've ever seen in there twice, except the man who's always washing his teddies. The first few times I saw him, he didn't say much. He looks like someone you'd give a wide berth. He has visible twitches and possible learning difficulties and didn't usually say anything. Until one time, after a few run-ins, when he took his teddy out of the machine, he held it up like Mr. Bean and said hello to me through the teddy. I can't exactly remember my reaction. I know that when I responded, I tried to be as nice as possible, considering he probably has learning difficulties and could need a special approach. By now, I've lived here for over 2 years, and he's the only person who keeps reoccurring in the washroom. And this time I'm in there before he is, and he's standing at the door. I try to make polite conversation as I'm busy doing my laundry, while he stood at the door with his full attention on me. When he speaks, he sounds normal. His tone and demeanor is different to the way he normally is. He talks about how awful lockdown is, tells me where he works and what he still has to work. Normal stuff. And after a moment had passed, he quite firmly and in an irritated tone says, "I'm just trying to be socially distant." I apologize and give him plenty of room to get by. He goes to his machine beside mine and takes out a teddy from his laundry. And again, like before, speaks through his teddy. I was about done filling the machine at this point and told him to take care of himself and left. feeling very rattled by this strange change in character from the man who spends all his time washing his teddies. When I returned to the washroom to put my clothes in the dryer, I'd taken my time to return, maybe 2 hours or so. I didn't want to run into the guy again by going back at the same time as him. However, when I got there, someone had been in before me and removed my clothes. They had been thrown all down the back of the washer, definitely not accidentally, and this freaked me out. I picked it all up, threw it in the dryer, and rushed back to my flat and told my boyfriend what had happened. He told me not to go back tonight and that he'd go to finish it off. However, he just started cooking, so it was a long time before he returned. When he went to the dryer that I'd put our clothes in, they too had been removed and thrown all down the backs of the dryers. Nothing else in the washroom has been tampered with. To me, this said I was targeted. The first instance I thought maybe someone had a bad day, but with the hours between my moves and my clothes being targeted, I felt directly threatened. I know this could be a coincidence and it could be nothing, but my instincts tell me something more sinister could be going on, and could have been going on for a long time. With no real evidence, I can't raise alarm with the police, but I am very, very scared. I'm going to continue documenting this. So, what do you think? Hi, thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. If you want to send me a story to read, feel free to do so. My email is in the description of the video. And if you want to follow me on my social media, just to get updates or maybe to talk, the links and info for my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts are also in the description. And finally, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And turn that bell on to be notified for upcoming surprises. And remember, your fear feeds me.